Have you ever had a moment that was supposed to be entirely yours, a triumph you'd earned through blood, sweat, and tears, only to have someone hijack it and make it about them? Not subtly, not quietly, but right there in front of everyone, with a single phrase that exposed years of manipulation you'd been too close to see clearly? That's what happened at my graduation, when my mother leaned over and whispered 5 words that would change everything. Don't ruin this for us. Not enjoy your moment, not we're so proud of you, but don't ruin this for you. As if my achievement was primarily a reflection of them, as if my 4 years of hard work existed mainly to enhance their social standing, as if the only thing that mattered about my success was how it made the family look to strangers in the audience. Hey, race, the thing nobody tells you about toxic family control: it doesn't always look toxic from the inside. When you're raised by a controlling mother who frames every manipulation as concern, every boundary violation as care, every criticism as just trying to help you be your best, you start to think that maybe this is what love looks like. Maybe all mothers monitor their daughters' every move. Maybe it's normal to feel like you're constantly performing for an audience you never auditioned for. Maybe the tightness in your chest at family gatherings isn't anxiety, it's just you being ungrateful for all the sacrifices they've made. You spend years walking on eggshells, moderating your joy, shrinking your achievements, making yourself smaller and quieter and more palatable, all to avoid making a scene or embarrassing the family. And the worst part? You don't even realize you're doing it until something happens that's so egregious, so publicly revealing, that you can't unsee it anymore. But what if I told you that the moment someone overplays their hand is actually the moment you get your power back? What if those words "don't ruin this for us," spoken at your own graduation, could become the catalyst for breaking free from decades of control? What if the very thing your controlling parent feared most, public exposure of their manipulation, could happen not because you threw a fit or made a scene, but simply because you stopped managing their image and started honoring your own experience? This is the story of how one phrase, delivered at the worst possible moment, became the best thing that ever happened. How family public humiliation became family liberation. How a graduation ceremony became a graduation from a lifetime of emotional manipulation. You're about to discover how controlling parents use major life events as stages for their own performance, how "don't embarrass the family" becomes a weapon to keep you compliant, and how the quietest rebellion, simply being yourself, can be the most powerful statement of all. You'll learn to recognize the patterns of image control that masquerade as high standards, the guilt trips disguised as family values, and the manipulation that hides behind "we just want what's best for you." More importantly, you'll see exactly how one person let her mother's own words expose everything, not through confrontation, not through cruelty, but through the simple, radical act of refusing to shrink on her own special day. Because sometimes the greatest revenge isn't fighting back, it's just letting the truth speak for itself. Ready to see how it unfolds? Let's begin. There's something almost magical about graduation day, isn't there? The way the morning light hits your cap and gown hanging on the door, the nervous energy buzzing through your chest, the surreal feeling that after years of late nights and early mornings and everything in between, you've actually made it. She woke up that morning with her heart doing somersaults, checking her phone to see messages flooding in from friends, professors, even her old roommate from freshman year. Graduation day filled with pride and expectation. It was supposed to be her day, the culmination of 4 years of hard work, sleepless nights studying for exams, presentations that made her hands shake, papers she'd rewritten a dozen times. She had earned this moment, every grueling second of it, and today the world was going to acknowledge that achievement with a diploma and her name called out in front of everyone who mattered. Her family had arrived the night before: her mother, her father, her younger brother who complained about having to wear a tie but secretly looked proud. They'd gone to dinner at that Italian place her mother loved, the one with the white tablecloths and bread that came warm in a basket. Family present, emotions running high. Her father kept tearing up during the appetizers, her brother showed everyone the video he'd made of her best fails over the years, and even her mother seemed softer than usual, almost glowing with what looked like genuine pride. "My daughter, the graduate," she'd said, raising her wine glass. "We're so proud of you, sweetheart." Those words had wrapped around her like a warm blanket, settling something deep in her chest that had always felt slightly uncertain, slightly unsteady when it came to her mother's approval. The protagonist believes the day is about achievement, and why wouldn't she? Every speech Shed heard about graduation talked about celebrating accomplishment, honoring hard work, recognizing the graduate's journey. This was her moment, not her family's, not her mother's social event, not another opportunity for performance and appearances. Or at least, that's what she thought as she stood in front of the mirror that morning, adjusting her cap, smoothing down her gown, practicing the smile Shed wore when they called her name. Shed worked so hard for this, sacrificed so much, pushed through moments when she wanted to quit, and today was supposed to be the reward. Today was supposed to be about her, for once, without qualifications or conditions or the constant need to manage someone else's expectations. Trust in her mother still intact, she didn't notice the small warning signs that morning, the way her mother kept checking her own outfit in every reflective surface, the comments about making sure we get good photos, the subtle reminders about representing the family well. She was too excited, too nervous, too caught up in the enormousness of the moment to recognize the pattern that had been there all along. The graduation family drama that would unfold wasn't even on her radar as she rode to the ceremony with her family, her mother critiquing the traffic and her father fumbling with the parking pass. She was thinking about her speech, about seeing her friends, about that incredible feeling of walking across the stage and finally being done. She had no idea that her achievement was about to become a backdrop for something else entirely, something far more sinister disguised as maternal concern. The shift happened in the bathroom before the ceremony, while she was touching up her makeup and trying to calm the butterflies in her stomach. Her mother appeared in the mirror behind her, that particular expression on her face, the one that looked like concern but carried something sharper underneath. "We need to talk about something quickly," she said, her voice low and urgent. "I know you're excited, and that's wonderful, but I need you to remember that today isn't just about you. There are people here, colleagues of your father's, friends from the club, the Hendersons, who've been asking about you since you were in high school." The mother shifts focus to appearances with such practiced ease it's almost impressive, the way she can take a moment of pure achievement and immediately reframe it as a social performance with an audience to manage. "What I'm saying is," her mother continued, adjusting her own lipstick in the mirror, "you need to be mindful of how you present yourself today. No overly emotional reactions, no loud celebrations. You know how you can get carried away sometimes. We want people to see a poised, elegant young woman, not." She trailed off with a delicate hand wave that somehow managed to encompass every fear and insecurity Shed ever planted. "Just remember who's watching. Your father's reputation, our family's standing in the community, these things matter. So please, for once, think about someone other than yourself." And there it was, the manipulative phrase appears like a knife wrapped in silk. Don't ruin this for us. Not don't ruin this for yourself, not enjoy your day, but don't ruin this for us, as if her graduation was somehow primarily about them. The toxic family control was so seamless, so elegantly delivered, that for a moment she almost didn't register what had just happened. Her mother wasn't celebrating her achievement, she was stage managing it, turning what should have been a personal triumph into a performance piece designed to enhance the family's social standing. Family reputation placed above personal feelings, that was the unspoken rule Shed lived with her entire life, wasn't it? Every accomplishment filtered through the lens of what will people think, every moment of joy carefully measured and moderated to fit someone else's idea of appropriate. Her college acceptance had been about how it looked on Christmas cards. Her scholarships had been about bragging rights at dinner parties. And now her graduation, the culmination of 4 years of her work, her stress, her growth, was being reframed as their social opportunity. "I just need you to promise me you'll behave," her mother said, and the word behave landed like a slaw paw if she were 7 years old instead of 22, as if celebrating her own graduation would be misbehavior, as if existing too loudly was somehow a transgression against the family image. Emotional pressure framed as responsibility is the controlling mother's favorite tool, isn't it? The way they can make their anxiety, their need for control, their obsession with appearances feel like your moral obligation. "After everything we've done for you, after all the money we've spent, the least you can do is make us proud today. Not proud of you, we're already proud. Proud of how we raised you. Don't make us look bad in front of everyone." She stood there in that bathroom, cap slightly crooked, hands trembling just a little, and felt something shift in her chest. Not compliance, but something else, something that would take a few more hours to fully form. The ceremony had barely begun when it started. They were seated in the audience section, surrounded by other families buzzing with excitement, when she made the mistake of laughing a bit too loudly at something her friend texted her. Her mother's hand clamped down on her wrist, not hard enough to hurt but firm enough to send a message. "People are staring," she hissed under her breath, smile still plastered on her face for anyone watching. "Sit up straight. Stop fidgeting. And put that phone away. What will people think?" The mother corrects behavior in public with the precision of a puppeteer adjusting strings, each criticism delivered with a smile so the outside world sees a caring parent offering gentle guidance rather than what it really is, control masquerading as concern. When her friend's name was called and she stood to cheer because that's what you do, that's what the entire auditorium was doing, her mother pulled her back down into her seat with a forced laugh. "Let's not be dramatic, sweetheart," she said, loud enough for the people around them to hear. "Save your energy." The minimization of emotions happened so smoothly that the family sitting next to them probably thought it was a sweet moment of maternal moderation rather than another brick in a wall of control that had been building for 22 years. Every natural reaction, every spontaneous expression of joy or excitement was immediately tempered, adjusted, brought back within the acceptable parameters of her mother's vision of proper behavior. The subtle embarrassment in front of others is a special kind of cruelty, isn't it? The way her mother would criticize her posture, her expression, her responses, all while maintaining that serene smile, that loving tone, that appearance of being the perfect mother guiding her slightly unruly daughter. "You're slouching, honey. Here, let me fix your hair. There's a strand out of place." Each correction delivered like a gift, like she should be grateful for this constant monitoring, this relentless adjustment of who she was into, who her mother wanted her to appear to be. The woman sitting behind them probably thought, what a caring mother, so attentive to her daughter on this special day. They had no idea they were watching a masterclass in public humiliation disguised as parental affection. When it was finally her turn to walk across that stage, her mother grabbed her arm one last time. "Remember what I said. Smile, but not too big. Walk confidently but don't rush. When they hand you the diploma, a simple handshake, no hugging the dean like some of these other girls are doing. We're not that kind of family." Expectation of compliance delivered as final instructions, like a director giving notes to an actor before their big scene. And the truly devastating part. For a split second, standing there about to walk toward her hard-earned achievement, she felt that familiar tug of obligation, that deeply ingrained need to make her mother proud by becoming smaller, quieter, more controlled. The toxic parent story she had been living her whole life had trained her so well that even in this moment, even at her own graduation, her first instinct was still to obey, to comply, to prioritize her mother's comfort over her own joy. Something remarkable happened in the seconds between her mother's final instructions and her name being called. Instead of the familiar anxiety, the desperate need to perform correctly, the crushing weight of expectations, she felt nothing. Or rather, she felt everything, but from a distance, like she was watching the scene unfold from somewhere outside her body. Her mother's grip on her arm, the whispered commands, the barely concealed panic that she might do something inappropriate, it all suddenly looked different. Smaller. Almost absurd. The protagonist stays calm not because she's complying, but because she's finally seeing the whole picture clearly, and what she sees is so starkly manipulative that the only response is a kind of serene detachment. "I understand, Mom," she said softly, and she did, just not in the way her mother thought. She understood that this moment, which should have been about celebrating her achievement, had been hijacked and turned into another performance in the never-ending theater of family image management. She understood that no matter what she did, it would never be quite right, never be exactly perfect, never fully satisfy the impossible standards being imposed on her. Does not argue or explain, because what would be the point? You can't reason someone out of a position they didn't reason themselves into, and her mother's need for control wasn't based on logic, it was based on fear and insecurity disguised as high standards and family values. When they called her name, graduating with honors, magna cum laude, she walked across that stage with her head high. Not in the carefully modulated way her mother had prescribed, but with genuine pride, genuine joy, genuine presence in her own moment of achievement. She didn't rush, but she didn't diminish herself either. When the dean handed her the diploma, she did hug him because he'd been her advisor for 3 years, because he'd believed in her when she doubted herself, because human connection matters more than arbitrary rules about proper behavior. Observes quietly what happens next. She could see her mother in the audience, could see the tight smile, the barely perceptible shake of the head, the way her father leaned over to say something that was probably damage control. But here's what shifted everything. She allowed the moment to unfold without trying to manage her mother's reaction, without mentally apologizing for existing too fully, without that familiar spiral of anxiety about whether she'd done it right. The silent revenge family dynamics were beginning, though her mother had no idea yet. As she walked off that stage, diploma in hand, she felt something she hadn't felt in years: ownership of her own experience. The family public humiliation her mother had been trying to prevent through all those corrections and commands. It didn't happen. She'd been perfectly appropriate, perfectly professional, perfectly wonderful. The only person who had a problem with how she'd behaved was the one person whose opinion she was finally starting to realize didn't have to dictate her entire existence. After the ceremony, during the reception where families mingled and took photos, her mother immediately cornered her near the refreshment table. "That hug was completely unnecessary," she said, smile still fixed in place for the cameras but eyes sharp with disapproval. "I specifically told you a handshake would be more appropriate. And you walked too slowly." People were getting impatient. I saw Mrs. Henderson checking her watch. The complaints came rapid fire, each one a small cut designed to bleed away any joy she might have felt. But instead of the usual deflation, the familiar shrinking, the automatic apology, she just stood there, listening, really listening for the first time. Recognition of a long-standing pattern washed over her like cold water, shocking her into clarity. This wasn't about the hug. It had never been about the hug, or the walking speed, or any of the 1,000 other micro-corrections her mother had issued over the years. The emotional manipulation mother deployed so expertly wasn't about helping her be better. It was about maintaining control, about keeping her uncertain and apologetic and constantly seeking approval that would never fully come. She thought about her high school graduation, where she'd been scolded for crying during her valedictorian speech. Her 8th grade promotion, where her laughter had been too loud and unladylike. Her 6th birthday party, where she'd been reprimanded for opening presents too enthusiastically in front of guests. Every milestone, every achievement, every moment that should have been hers had been filtered through her mother's anxiety about appearances. "Are you even listening to me?" her mother demanded, and she realized she'd been silent for almost a full minute, just watching her mother's mouth move, cataloging the manipulation tactics like a scientist observing a specimen. Realization that control is not love hit her with the force of revelation. Love celebrates. Love encourages. Love wants you to feel big emotions on big days. Love doesn't spend your graduation ceremony monitoring your posture and measuring your smile against some imaginary standard of acceptable joy. What her mother was offering had always been offering wasn't love. It was performance management. It was image curation. It was the desperate need to control how the family appeared to others, with her daughter as the primary prop in that carefully staged production. "I need to take some photos with my friends," she said, her voice steady and calm. "I'll find you later." She turned and walked away before her mother could respond, and that simple act, walking away mid-criticism, prioritizing her own experience over her mother's need to debrief every perceived mistake, felt revolutionary. Internal decision to stop protecting the image formed not with anger or drama, but with the quiet certainty that comes when you finally see the truth clearly enough that you can't unsee it. She was done. Done performing. Done shrinking. Done letting someone else's anxiety about what strangers might think dictate how fully she was allowed to exist in her own life. Emotional clarity replaces fear when you finally understand that the worst thing that can happen, disappointing someone who will never truly be satisfied, is actually far less terrible than continuing to disappoint yourself by staying small. An hour later, during the family photo session that her mother had scheduled with a professional photographer, the moment arrived. They were all arranged on the lawn: her parents, her brother, extended family had driven in for the occasion when her mother started her familiar routine. Stand up straighter. Tilt your head that way. Not so much smile, you look manic. Less teeth. Chin down. No, now you look unfriendly. The directions came like bullets, each one designed to adjust her into the perfect image, the acceptable version, the daughter who existed primarily to reflect well on the family. A simple, strategic choice formed in her mind, clear as glass and just as sharp. When the photographer asked, "Any special requests for the family shots?" she spoke up before her mother could. "Actually, yes. Could you get one of just me? And then one of me with my friends?" Her mother's face tightened imperceptibly, but the photographer was already nodding, already repositioning. "Of course. This is your day, after all. Let's get some shots that are all about you celebrating your achievement." The words hung in the air, your day, your achievement, and she watched her mother process them, watched the micro-expressions of displeasure that anyone who knew her would recognize but that a stranger would miss entirely. No confrontation, no scene, just a simple assertion of autonomy that shifted the entire dynamic. Her mother tried to regain control. "Well, we can do that after the family photos. We're paying for the photographer's time, and family comes first." But the photographer, oblivious to the undercurrent, was already gesturing for her to step forward. "It'll just take a minute. You look beautiful, let's capture this moment." She stepped away from her family, stood alone in her cap and gown with her diploma, and smiled. Not the careful, measured smile her mother had prescribed, but a genuine, full-faced, joyful smile. The mother's own words become evidence when she called out, "Don't ruin this for us." Loud enough that several nearby families turned to look, confusion on their faces. The photographer paused, clearly uncomfortable. "I'm sorry, is there a problem?" And her mother, realizing she'd been too loud, tried to backtrack. "No, no problem. I just meant we have limited time, and I want to make sure we get what we paid for." But the damage was done. Power shifts publicly without shouting when the mask slips just enough for others to see what's underneath. The other families had heard it. "Don't ruin this for use in a day that was supposed to be about the graduate." Her father looked mortified. Her brother was staring at his shoes. And she just stood there, still smiling, letting the moment speak for itself. The dark family drama her mother had been so desperate to avoid had arrived anyway, not because of her behavior, but because control eventually exposes itself when pushed too hard. The female empowerment story was writing itself in real time, and for once, she wasn't the one who needed to be ashamed. The rest of the photo session was excruciating for her mother, at least. Every attempt to regain control of the narrative fell flat. "I think we're all just tired and overwhelmed with emotion," her mother said loudly to anyone within earshot, performing damage control with the desperation of someone watching their carefully constructed image crumble. "You know how graduation day can be, so much excitement, so many feelings." Attempts to regain control through reframing, through explaining away the outburst, through redirecting attention. But the photographer had already captured something in his expression, that slight raising of eyebrows, that glance at his assistant that said, "Yikes, family drama." The other families were giving them space now, that polite distance people maintain when they've witnessed something uncomfortable. Her mother pulled her aside after the photos, gripped tight on her elbow, voice low and urgent. "I don't know what you think you're doing, but you're embarrassing yourself. People are talking. The Hendersons saw everything. Do you have any idea what this looks like?" Use of guilt and reputation deployed like familiar weapons, the tried-and-true arsenal that had always worked before. "After everything we've done for you, paid for your education, supported you, came all this way to celebrate, this is how you repay us? By making a scene? By making me look like some kind of controlling monster in front of everyone?" The mother using guilt was reaching peak desperation now, throwing everything at the wall to see what would stick, what would trigger the old conditioning, what would make her daughter collapse back into compliance. But something had fundamentally shifted. "I didn't make a scene, Mom," she said calmly, not pulling her arm away but not shrinking either. I asked for a photo. You're the one who yelled "Don't ruin this" for us loud enough for half the lawn to hear. The simple statement of fact landed like a grenade. Panic when control fails showed in her mother's eyes, that flash of genuine fear when the usual tactics stop working, when the patterns that have held for decades suddenly dissolve. "That's Noti didn't you're twisting my words,"
just families
her mother
politely
stammered,
pretending
looking
not to
around
watch
as
while
if searching for
absolutely
witnesses
watching.
who would back her version of
Her
events.
father approached,
clearly
but there were none.
uncomfortable. "Can we just get through the rest of the day without any more drama?" And she realized he was talking to her, not her mother. As always, the person being controlled was expected to be the one who kept the peace. But before she could respond, her brother surprised everyone. "Dad, she literally just wanted a picture by herself." "That's normal. Mom's the one who freaked out." The audience experiences catharsis through the younger brother's words, the truth telling from an unexpected source. Her mother's face went pale, then red. "Don't you dare take her side. I am your mother. I deserve respect." But the collapse of control was complete now, visible to everyone, including her mother herself. The more she insisted on respect, the more she revealed that respect was the last thing her behavior had earned. The toxic family control that had operated so smoothly in private was faltering spectacularly in public, and there was nothing left to do but watch it burn. 3 months after graduation, sitting in her new apartment in a different city with a job she'd chosen and a life she was building on her own terms, she finally understood the most important lesson of that day: achievements don't belong to controlling parents. That diploma on her wall, those 4 years of hard work, those late nights and early mornings and moments of doubt she'd pushed through, none of that belonged to her mother's narrative about family reputation or social standing. It was hers. It had always been hers. The graduation family drama that unfolded hadn't ruined her day the way her mother had feared. It had liberated it, shown her clearly and publicly what she'd been dealing with her entire life. And somehow, having witnesses to that moment, having other people see what usually happened behind closed doors, had validated something she'd questioned for years. She wasn't crazy, she wasn't ungrateful, she wasn't the problem. She'd set boundaries after that day, real ones, enforced ones, the kind that made her mother furious and her father uncomfortable, but that she maintained anyway. "I'll call once a week. Criticisms about my choices, my appearance, or my life are off limits. If you can't respect that, the call ends." Love doesn't require silence, she'd learned. Real love doesn't demand that you shrink yourself to make someone else comfortable. Real love doesn't turn your achievements into their social opportunities. Real love celebrates you being fully yourself, not a carefully curated version designed to reflect well on the family image. Her mother had called her selfish, ungrateful, cruel for establishing these boundaries. But she'd held firm, and slowly, very slowly, the dynamic began to shift. The phone calls with her mother were still difficult, still occasionally veered into old patterns. But now when her mother said things like "I'm just trying to help" while criticizing her choices, she could calmly respond, "I didn't ask for help. I asked for support." When guilt was deployed after everything we've done for you, she had a new response: "You chose to be a parent. That came with responsibilities you signed up for. I don't owe you my autonomy as payment." Image control collapses under truth when you stop participating in the fiction, when you refuse to pretend that control is care, that manipulation is love, that someone else's anxiety about appearances should dictate your entire existence. Her mother hated these responses, called her cold and different and influenced by all those therapy sessions. But she wasn't cold, she was finally warm enough to herself to stop freezing to make someone else comfortable. The most surprising thing was that her relationship with her mother didn't end, it evolved. Not into something perfect or easy, but into something more honest. Her mother still struggled with control, still made comments, still had moments of reverting to old patterns. But now there were consequences. Now the calls ended when boundaries were crossed. Now she didn't show up to family events where she knew she'd be criticized. Cycles break quietly, not with dramatic confrontations or cutting people off forever, but with consistent, patient enforcement of what you will and won't accept. Sometimes her mother would have good days, would ask about her life without immediately offering unsolicited advice, would even occasionally say "I'm proud of you" without qualification. Those moments didn't erase the past, but they hinted at a possible future one where they could have a relationship based on mutual respect rather than control. And if that future never fully arrived? Well, she'd learned that her peace was more valuable than her mother's approval, and that lesson alone had been worth every uncomfortable moment of that graduation day. Moments like that graduation don't just mark the end of a chapter, they reveal truths that were always there. When someone says, "Don't ruin this for us," they're not protecting the moment. They're protecting control. And once you see that clearly, there's no pretending you didn't. Many people grow up believing that love requires silence, that gratitude means obedience, and that family reputation matters more than personal truth. But real empowerment begins when you stop carrying roles that were never yours. Achievements don't belong to those who try to manage your image. They belong to the one who actually earned them. So raise the real question: how many moments in your life have been shaped by someone else's fear of exposure? And how different would your future look if you stopped protecting what hurts you? Choosing yourself doesn't have to be loud. It just has to be honest. If this story resonated with you, subscribe to the channel now. Here, we share powerful family revenge stories, silent power reversals, and journeys of breaking toxic cycles. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story, because some truths only come out when someone finally refuses to stay quiet.